want to thank everybody for coming to our second and last SOPA Media Insider of the year. I'd just like to introduce our moderator today, who is Laurel West, the Managing Director of Content Solutions at The Economist Group, based in Hong Kong. She's going to take a minute to introduce the other panelists. Before we start, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Bloomberg for their very kind hospitality in hosting us this morning. Without them, a lot of these events wouldn't actually be possible, so we are very grateful. And with that, I'll hand over to Laurel.
I'm glad to sound here. I do great. And I'm glad to see my colleagues in Shannon on time, albeit at the last minute. Right, so I'm going to step up on stage here and try not to fall. And then I'm going to invite my fellow panelists to come. Ladies first, we've got Patricia Sham, who is the Director of Media Marcoms Asia. And I'm sure if any of you have been recruiting, you probably know Patricia. Next we have Ali Barnard, who is the Senior Manager of Marketing and Communications at JLL, formerly Jones Lang LaSalle. From the corporate side, we have Tony Chow, who's the Regional Director of Creative and Content Marketing with Marriott International. From the agency side, we have David Ketchum, who is the CEO of Current Asia. And finally, we have Kevin Lau, who is the Development Officer, Career Strategist at the Journalism and Media Studies Center at Hong Kong U. Everybody, please. So we're here.
The most applause all day.
Don't count on it. You haven't heard my jokes yet. We're here today to talk about content talent. And I think it would be a good place to start just by asking everybody to quickly tell us what content means to them, because as I'm sure most of you in the audience here know, it's quite a broad spectrum. So we have several businesses that involve content, aside from obviously the Economist magazine, which we won't call content, we will call journalism, or I'll be fired. So we have thought leadership research, which is quite high-end bespoke research that we do for clients who are looking for a very intelligent way to engage their audience. And this can be quite complicated research involving benchmarking indices, scenario forecasts, et cetera, et cetera. And we do roll this out on the Economist platform using content hubs and other means. We also do client-branded content. We call it client-branded, the rest of people call it branded content, which is done by a completely separate team and does not have any relation to the Economist brand, although we do have an option called eBrand Connect, which is a close association with the Economist brand, but it is still in the branded space. And we also have Economist events, which I hope some of you have been to. I can recognize a few faces from those, which also have a very strong content component to them. At the moment, I have been in a hiring position. I head up the division that covers all of the content aside from the events. And I've done a lot of hiring over the last few years, and that was what inspired. I'm about to do more for 3 different positions, and that was what inspired me to suggest this as a topic for discussion today. Because personally, I find it very challenging to find good people. I don't know whether I just have ridiculously high standards. I mean, it's particularly challenging on the editorial side, particularly when we're looking for editors who can work on that EIE branded content that involves rather more complicated subject matter and working with a lot of data that might be difficult for the average journalist to understand. But right now I'm going to, soon begin hiring for a senior editor based here in Hong Kong, hopefully somebody that has financial services background. That's the ultimate, and one we can afford in my head, which is the ultimate unicorn. In my experience, I'm also looking for a digital marketer and a project manager that can work on our integrated programs. And now I'll stop talking and turn it over to Ali. Tell us about content at JLL.
Hello, everybody. Wow,
it's quite a broad spectrum. So I also work on the marketing and communications side of things. So really when JLL thinks about content, we're really thinking about communications that go out to our clients and prospective clients, most importantly. So when I took up my role 3 years ago now, I went in and said, would you like some content? Because I've got a journalism background. And I was like, I want to play to my strengths. So for us, really, that can be, as Laura was saying, it can be thought leadership. We do 2 to 3 white papers in partnership with our research team every year, and those are fairly in-depth papers, anywhere from 4 to 16 pages that we will then break down and use in a variety of different ways. It could be, we produce about 1 article per week. We produce several videos per month. We also produce a number of different infographics. And then there are the sort of smaller, much more bite-sized pieces of content that we share on our social media daily. And again, those could be graphics or very sort of short breakdowns or quotes from our senior leaders. So really, it's quite a broad spectrum we use.
Tony, tell us about Mary.
Hi. I lead creating and content marketing for Marriott. So for content, to me, is really anything and everything that we actually connect with our customer. So it's a customer first approach, and that is the thing that we focus a lot right now because of the changing marketing landscape. Particularly now, I think it's more important that you build a relationship with your customers to maintain loyalty and hopefully to build loyalty. So for me, there are 2 layers. So we have 30 brands. So because of that, there's a better needs to actually be able to connect our brands to the consumer. So from an internal marketing as well as an external marketing. So we look at 2 parts of the thing, working with brands to actually create content to better connect with the consumer. And second part, internal communications. Because we also believe that the best way that you can actually provide not only thought leadership, but really the sense of what our brand reputation, our company reputation is through our associates or our people. So internal communications also look into how our people actually communicate, especially at property level. Throughout 30 brands, we have about 6,000 hotels worldwide and 600 in Asia Pacific. So a lot of that to actually manage in terms of how we communicate with our customer. That's the content to us for Marriott.
Great. David, do you want to tell us about you?
Sure. Good morning. For Current Asia, we're really in the business of helping companies say the right thing at the right time in the right way at each stage of a customer's journey, right? Coming from learning about a company until all the way through they become the customer. So I guess just to have a different point of view than other people on the panel, because I think this panel is more interesting. We look at content as like relevance fuel, right? We could start with where is that customer, just like Tony was saying, it's a customer-centric approach. As I'm beginning my journey and I'm out there searching what kind of content is going to make me most visible and most relevant at that search stage. And then maybe at a second stage in my journey, I'm on LinkedIn and I'm listening to what my peers are saying and I'm consuming content there or I'm interested. And then maybe at that third stage, I just want to buy something or I want a salesperson to call me or I want to engage with that brand. And so really for us, it's about getting the right content at the right time through that channel. And for us, although we tie into events and real world activities, it's almost completely that digital journey.
Thank you. Just before we get into the issue of content on a little bit more depth, I'd like to just ask the audience, how many of you are here because you are looking to hire or find content? Hands up. Okay. And how many of you are here because you are content talent? Oh, well, we'll have a mix and match in the lobby afterwards. All right, so why don't we jump in and talk about the pain points. As I said, I find every time I have to recruit, I just take a deep breath and go, oh, what am I going to find this time? Why don't you tell us, Ali, let's start with you. I know you're not in recruitment, but I think you do have a viewpoint on what are some of the issues you find in terms of the skill sets that you need versus what you find.
Yeah, so so as Laura said, I'm not in a hiring position, but what I have found, I mean, on a very basic level, what can be difficult to find in the Hong Kong market, very fluent native English writing skills, very good transcreation skills, so not just like-for-like translation, actually somebody who can take perhaps a piece of English copy and transcreate that into, for Hong Kong mostly we are using traditional and simplified Chinese in a way that when it comes back to us in-house, it doesn't require so much editing that we might as well have done it in-house. Because a lot of, when you're working in a corporate or you're working in an organization, a lot of the time you need these external parties to help you with this. And this is to help you manage your resources. You don't want to send something out and then get it back and find out that actually you've got to do just as much work. So on a sort of basic level, that can be it. But also it can be on an editorial level. Really, it's trying to find people who are really curious. So those people don't necessarily need to be journalists, but they do need to be very curious. And they do need to have an ability to commit themselves to finding out really about your business and the itty-bitty granular levels of your business. I work in real estate, and I was explaining to Patricia earlier, that's not just selling individual properties. I'm selling our services, and that's everything from office and retail leasing all the way through to land for sale and government land sales and everything in between. So the business can be quite difficult to understand. So you really need to find those people who are curious and committed to really digging deep within your business so that you can find the angles and the stories that are actually going to be interesting and help you connect with your clients or your prospective clients. I actually work in a very diverse team at JLL. I am one of two former or recovering journalists on my team. We also we work with a digital specialist. I have a property marketing marketer on our team, and one of our sadly has just left us. Our digital marketing manager previously was a runner for the Great British Bake Off. So really, you can get talent from anywhere. You just need to find those people who are proactive, have good communication skills, and are curious and committed to your business.
Thank you. Tony, tell us about your pain points. But first, can you explain the model that you use at Marriott? We were talking earlier, you outsource or use vendors for the actual content creation.
Well, actually, I'm not from hotel itself or hospitality. I came from a TV background, been in television and advertising for 22 years. So the point is that I moved from media broadcasting to hospitality, and I think that's a trend that most brands are looking to first and foremost leveraging on the skill of storytelling into brand. I think I established in the beginning that why we need to be more customer-centric, and therefore understanding what customer needs rather than what the brand needs from a first point require a lot more to do with how you look at storytelling. I think that's the most important component. So by bringing into Marriott 3 years ago, that's the whole reason about trying to bring the media space, the storytelling space into brand or hospitality. So when I look at it, when I came in, I built the team from scratch. I approached the same concept of looking for people that are actually more media savvy. Because I think they're storytellers that I want to be able to actually first and foremost socialize within a very established and perhaps a little bit conservative company like Marriott to actually understand why storytelling is important. Because often than not, I think a lot of the cases is that when brands are concerned, they're always going to fight to be the hero of the story. They're always brand-led, brand first. It's not wrong, but I think what the whole conversation now has turned around to is the fact that you have to think about what your customer needs first and put them at the center of that story, which is the hero. And brand enable you to achieve the aspiration or that journey that you want to go for and help you fulfill your dreams. So it's a great way to kind of like trying to convince your brand, who often than not will put money behind advertising and say, no, everything must have, it's the same way 22 years ago when I worked on advertising, brands always said, put my logo first. Then I was thinking, should I just put your logo for 30 seconds? And that's it, forget about everything else, since you just want to see your brand. Some advertisers or even brand here in Hong Kong, you can see they still do that. For example, not to name names, like Vitasoy, I just saw last night, where you see that it was just all the Vitasoy brands everywhere, and there's hardly any story about it. But I know it's difficult to change that mindset. So we started a studio 3 years ago called the Marriott Content Studio. But obviously, the people I hire are, number one, socially savvy. I don't think there's such a thing called social media expert. But socially savvy means that you must do it, live, and breathe it, so that you are in the mindset of socially savvy or social media savvy. So you are the one that consumes social media, and I need that skill set for me because we do a lot of social. The content triangle is content, field, digital, and social. So digital channel is all where we're doing marketing today. So obviously that's a key fundamental. Then on the social media side is distribution channel, where we actually use that to promote, use that to further distribute. So it's a three-way relationship, and content is the key to that. So socially, social media savvy is number one. Number two, storytelling. So I look for people actually from the media space, whether journalists, whether they are actually TV producers, but they function more for me as a project manager. That means that the content developer, they don't actually need to execute them because we still leverage on production talent to do that. We outsource that. But the advantage of that is that they can communicate through brand to our partners directly with the vendor rather than the old way where they lost in translation. And that's the value. So number one, I'm very savvy about how the production process works, so you can't cheat me on the production costs. So that's the one. Number two, I know what is required to do a production, whether it's a short film or a video or a social content. So that's the advantage. It saves money for the company. Then thirdly, I think those skill sets that we get helps to be bridging throughout the internal stakeholder, whether the loyalty marketing team, the brand team, the operation team, and so on and so forth. So that's how I structure it in terms of my hiring pattern. So today we work on what we call content managers format and or executive and coordinator to help me to actually bridge that relationship.
Thanks, Tony. I think you hit on a very good point there, and I think we mentioned this in the promotional blurb for the panel. It was one of the key questions that I had is, are journalists the best people for content positions? And what I found is, in many ways, yes, they are, because they tend to have that natural curiosity and ability to come up with a new angle on a tired topic. However, where it breaks down is when you put them in front of clients. They are not the most socially adept people in the main. And I find that that's not something you can really learn, to be honest, in my many years of experience of observing this. David, I know you had some thoughts on this.
Well, I think I'm nodding vigorously as you were talking. I mean, I think our clients are looking for a very commercial outcome. And so if you take all the romance of content and producing videos and infographics, take that away. How much did I spend and how much did it cost me to get a lead, a sales lead? And what was that sales lead, right? Was that just somebody who filled out a form online and said, I might want to know more? Or was it somebody who clicked a live chat and said, I want to talk to a salesperson now? Or was it someone who completed an e-commerce transaction, right? And our clients define conversion in different ways. But most of our clients live in a very, very unpleasant world where they spent the last 15 years organizing the chairman's charity ball and doing Vitasoy ads besides the buildings and things that not to mention names, and being marketing communications people. And then management says, you're doing such a terrific job that I want to know how many sales leads you've generated, and then divide that into the total cost of your operation, including headcount, computers, office space. So that's the world that we live in. So journalists and ex-journalists are really, really important in that because they're the storytellers, right? And they understand the relevance of the story and make that come to life. But then you also need commercial people. And what we find is, and anyone in this room or in this town who can bring both of those skills together, you're hired. But what we find that in order to satisfy our clients, we actually have to hire different types of people and pull them into a team, because they come from different orientations and different backgrounds. And almost as awkward as a journalist in a client meeting telling the truth loudly in a very articulate way, it can be embarrassing. It can also be embarrassing when a marketing or a business person comes in and explains very theoretically and academically about how things go and what a customer journey is, right? What we want is that, what's that captivating, interesting, compelling thing that you have to say, or that angle. So, I don't know, all this digital stuff ends up being about HR, which is terribly frustrating, actually. Just go directly into HR and skip the digital part. But so for us, it's a recruitment challenge to find people or put together a team that has both those kinds of skills, and then you add Cantonese and Mandarin and English on top of that. So it really has to be about kind of a bundled solution of a team producing a product that justifies that sales lead generation or that end business.
Thanks. On that note about recruitment, I think we should give our panelists a chance to have a word here. Patricia, what are you seeing in the market? First of all, if you could explain the breadth of the recruitment that you do, the types of positions, and then what you're seeing in terms of content talent, as we've just been discussing here.
Sure, thank you, Lauren. So I run Media Marcoms Asia. We're a specialist executive search recruitment company that focuses predominantly on the media industry. I've been recruiting for 15 years and worked my way as a generalist to now a specialist, because I've seen a massive transition in the media industry. Traditionally, it was always media, was pretty much just print, television, events off the back of that. And when I remember when guys like Your Money and The Economist and the FT were setting up their events teams 10 or 12 years ago, I was actually very young. By the way, I was very, very young. I started very young in recruitment. I was helping them with program editor positions, and that skill set was extremely hard to find. We would often look at journalists and editors for those types of roles, but they really lacked the bigger picture thinking. They lacked the project management skills and actually putting the events together. Some of them at that point lacked the external interpersonal skills to be able to go out and find speakers for events and look beyond Hong Kong, look at regional. A lot of these conferences were regional at the time. But we succeeded. We adapted a very versatile, open-minded approach. We looked at a lot of young graduates that had maybe studied macroeconomics and geopolitics, were generally interested in the topic, and then assessed their personalities to see if they could fit the roles. And this is a similar transition that I'm seeing now, because media is no longer just print or TV. Media is now anything from social to video, digital advertising, technology-based solutions. And each and every product demands a certain personality or a certain commercial insight. Clients nowadays, as a number of you have quite rightly pointed out, everybody's looking to tell their story in a unique and creative way. Everyone is looking for return on investment in that message that they could get across, whether it's on a digital platform, it's television, or it's through an event. I was always recruiting advertising salespeople who would pretty much go out and sell a rate card, a very straightforward rate card for a front page ad or a specific kind of research report. But now clients are sort of saying, we need people who understand thought leadership and who can actually sit down with the CEO and discuss their business and their growth and their brand and how they want to take it forward globally. And articulate a commercial strategy for that client. And this shouldn't just encompass print advertising. This should encompass everything from running a special report to doing a country analysis that would a report that would then be sent out to their key clients. Off the back of that, running a roundtable to invite their key clients to attend a networking seminar. So I'm sitting there going, okay, so now I need to find this genius who can pretty much sell and who can talk the talk. and who understands everything from a global perspective. How am I going to find that? But we do. We don't often fail, but what we try and do is really adapt a more strategic approach into finding that skill set. And as Tony said, or Ali said, this isn't necessarily your typical media sales guy. You know, this could be someone who sold digital solutions in the past, who understands the story. This could be somebody who's launched a new product, who has that conceptual thinking. And I'm finding that with clients who are looking for marketing people as well. Everybody in marketing needs to understand content. Everybody in marketing, from a business point of view, needs to be able to write articulately and get a core message across. So these are the transitions that I'm seeing in recruitment. I think the definition of content has evolved. It used to be specialists in their focus on their channel or medium. So you would have a journalist, or you would have somebody in broadcast media and film production. But today, I think with the smartphone evolution and technology becoming so widespread and so accessible, anyone can be a content creator. So it's, you don't need to be a journalist or a trained filmographer. You basically just need to be able to have an understanding as to how to appeal to a mass audience. And how to articulate a message quick enough to get onto that 5-second video clip that goes viral but really gets the message across, where you get all the likes and the hits and that sort of thing. So the only challenge I find in doing this is that we often come across people who are younger, in that millennial kind of generation, and they have different work ethic. So from a management point of view, that can prove to be quite challenging. Managing and mentoring and motivating them, you have to adapt a different approach. So that's a whole set of, other challenges that I often discuss with the client, about kind of bringing out the best in performance.
Thank you, very interesting. We'll come back to that point about mentoring and training in a moment, but I want to give our friend from Hong Kong U a chance to tell us about the graduating students and where they're going in terms of careers, how many are staying in journalism, how they getting involved in this area of content.
So just before I came, I looked at our most recent figures from our 2016 graduates, and only about 46% stayed in journalism. I'm part of the journalism department at HKU, and what we say is like having storytelling as the main skill set, but we end up seeing it applied quite across different fields. Under 50% stay in journalism, and the other half end up moving into different areas, whether it's with agencies, for NGOs, they may be in-house for the digital side. Some of them move into startups because a lot of startups may be very lean with their marketing budget. So they may actually end up taking a role managing sort of social properties for startups, and that's where they get a lot of their stuff. I've also seen sort of, or actually current students do that for startups. For example, Instigate. I've seen that happen as well. But it's quite broad in terms of where they end up. And a lot of it depends on maybe when they go through journalism school, they decide they don't want to be a journalist. Maybe decide that it's not as creative. Maybe there aren't as many jobs in that area, so they end up deciding to move into different fields after they graduate. But it's not so stuck into a certain area. And it's quite platform agnostic as well. They move into different areas. And that's usually what I've been seeing the last few years. And when I speak with different people from in academia, it's quite a common trend as well. So it's not just relegated to us.
And does this apply equally to both the master's students as well as the undergrads? Or are you talking primarily about the master's?
So the 46% figure is overall between the graduates and undergraduates, but what I noticed is that our master's students are more likely to stay in journalism because some of them might have left a previous career doing something else. They might have been in investment banking, or they might have been in IT, and they decided journalism was what they wanted to do. So they're more likely to stay in journalism. Whereas the undergrad, which was one of our former students who are really proud, has actually moved on to like sort of PR and content area. And So that's, I see how the breakdown is. Grad students may more likely stay in journalism because they might pay themselves in the school, whereas undergraduates, because they're exploring what they want to do for the next 3 to 4 years, they'll try different areas and different aspects of the industry.
Thanks. Trish, you touched on the whole issue of taking people that are from perhaps non-traditional backgrounds you wouldn't necessarily think of as content people and kind of molding them. But I just wonder, it seems to me that in this industry in general, everybody's trying to keep everything as lean and mean as possible. And I wonder how much capacity there is for mentoring, shaping, molding, training people. I think probably our 3 middle panelists here are best placed to answer that. Ali?
So really, you want to know how I got here?
No. Actually, I was asking, what you've seen at JLL, it sounds like a pretty lean team as it is, but I mean, what I'm talking about is the capacity to take somebody that, say, your guy that was a runner on the Bake Off, I assume he required some training.
Yes, definitely. I think definitely there is definitely some molding. I mean, I can speak from my sort of own experience, I suppose. So I was actually trained as a broadcast journalist. So I worked in radio for 4 years, and then I worked for CNN International for 7 years. Before moving into the sort of corporate space. So when I got to JLL, I had really no experience of the sort of corporate marketing journey. I've got to say thank you to David, because David's taught me a few bits and pieces about the customer journey and personas over time. But yeah, I mean, you as the head of a team. I think you really do need to be able to take a big picture view and to be able to identify those skills within people and where you might be able to sort of move them. So my colleague who worked on Bake Off, she obviously was a very good storyteller. She was a good project manager. She was very used to, as I was, doing things in against very short deadlines, getting stuff done. It sort of goes back to that proactivity stuff. But she was our digital marketing manager. So she and I basically had to go on a journey of learning how digital paid campaigns on things like LinkedIn and Facebook and Taboola and Outbrain work. And we had to leverage the skills of external parties. We had to leverage the skills of the providers. So we met with Facebook, we met with LinkedIn, we asked them for training. And we had to leverage the skills of digital specialists that already existed in the business. And they weren't in Hong Kong, they were in Singapore. So there were a lot of webinars and conferences and calls, and I mean, to this day, I'm currently rolling out another white paper, and I'm still working with the team in Singapore to deal with the very technical aspects of that work, because that's something that I'm not an expert in, but you need to get right. So I think, yes, if you're the head of the team, if you're hiring, you do need to work out what people's skills are on where they might be able to take it. For me, obviously, I think it was probably easier because they were like, oh, you're a journalist, you can do some content. For my colleague and digital marketing, I think they just understood that she was, as sort of Tony was saying, socially savvy. And that was a skill that they could develop in her, and that she would be able to be an ambassador for being socially savvy with our internal stakeholders, because half of the battle, as everybody knows, is getting your staff on board and getting them to actually share the content that you produce and thus amplify its reach.
Tony, would you like to add to that?
I think for me, the best team is actually identifying what your own weaknesses and fill your weaknesses with those strengths, right? So for me, I look for people that probably that I don't have and actually can help me to succeed in the sense that, for example, I may not be so up to date with some social media channels. Like I may not know how to use Snapchat or how to use Boomerang, and I learn, right? I mean, the fun part about the job is often that with the rapidly changing marketing landscape, you learn every day. So I see that more from a perspective of very young at heart. But at the same time, you feel with people that are good at what they're doing, but maybe do not have the experience. But they're motivated to actually want to grow. And then you work with them. And then they actually fill those gaps that you may not have. So for me, that's the first criteria. Definitely from that perspective. And if they do have that love for storytelling, that's a very good fundamental because I think we can train them. Because I don't believe that at the end of the day, everybody comes with all the necessary skill sets, but at the same time, they can be trained. The same way when we look at hotel staff, we first and foremost, you need to be, you want to be frontline service. So the most important thing that a general manager needs to identify is someone that has the personality, who love interacting with the customer, the guest. That's the very fundamental, because everything else in how to be a better front operational staff and all that can be trained. Right, and slowly they can learn. But if the personality and the first part of that character is not there, it's very difficult to train them. For example, can they even smile? I mean, in front of the guests. So I think those are the things that I probably want to look out for rather than say, okay, fit them so much in silo. Because I think today it's very difficult to put them in boxes. So I think we need to be a bit broader, and that's where I think we will build a good team for me. And for me, those are the skill sets that I think kind of help. And I do admit that motivating millennials is harder because I do see people have a career path they want to grow, and sometimes it's very hard to put them because they're still structured within company, especially big company, where a lot of red tapes and bureaucracy. So sometimes to really push them, and they're very eager to learn, but at the same time, how do we actually give them a bit more sort of like patience and all that? That's where I think I face the challenge most. So I always say that it's not just storyteller I'm looking at, but strategic storyteller. How to be strategic, and that's something that I think can go over time. But it's looking to be good. I think those skill sets are really relevant, and I'm glad that we have the opportunity from someone that comes from a very traditional TV background, able to plug into brand perspective on a different environment. And that seems to be working.
David?
It's a pleasure to go after you, Tony. Very nice. I had a very terrifying boss earlier in my career, and she said, David, do you get it or do you don't get it? I said, yes, ma'am, I get it. And she said, okay, we'll continue, right? And that's the same in our business. Can you put yourself in the shoes of your customer at different stages in the client journey or the customer journey and imagine what it would be like to be a high net worth mainland investor looking to buy an apartment in London? I am in the market for apartments in London because I want to diversify my portfolio and get some good investment opportunities. So what's in my mind? What would I be interested in reading? What would I want to know? Would I want a video? Would I want an infographic? How would it be? Or in a very technical way, let's say you're looking at e-commerce software or something like that. You're working in a business, or you're talking to your wife about insurance, right? All these sort of considered purchases that aren't just like see something on Amazon and click, but actually require some thought and there's a journey there. And for us, that's the like, do you get it or you don't get it moment. And if you get it, then you can be trained and you can be built into a team and you can do other things if you could put yourself in that mode. And some of you, Ali knows, we have a person on our team who basically joined us writing South China Morning Post 1979 articles. That was her like big skill, trained as a journalist. And basically, over a couple of years, she's really learned, and she's thought about different types of content and how content changes along that customer journey, and actually has learned a lot, right? So she came in with a very useful skill to us, but over time, she gets it. And she's managed to learn. And for those things that we can't, if you can't teach, then outsource, right? We work with lots and lots of freelancers because sometimes you just need that particular skill and you can't wait 17 years to grow it. You just go and rent it.
good answer. I think it'd be interesting to ask, what is the oddest combination of skills that you've hired, or the biggest outlier might be a more accurate way to describe it? And Ali, you talked about your runoff baker girl. Any other examples?
I don't know. I think that's probably I think that was the moment, by the way, that I decided to take my job. Was the moment that it was actually not the boss who hired me, but it was the boss that I have currently. And I said, well, who else is on this? Who else is on this team? And I said, I'm interested to learn. I want to develop my skills in a much more sort of client-focused way. I want to move into the content space. I want to move into the digital space, but I don't know anything about marketing. Who else is on this? Who else is on this team? And she said, well, she'd always worked in marketing. She said, we've got another woman who's pretty much always worked at JLL. The PR manager's going to come from the SEMP. She's being hired at the same time as you. I thought, okay. And then she said, and we've got our partnerships manager, who then became our digital marketing manager. Yeah, she worked for Comic Relief and the Great British Bake Off. And I said to her, why would you want to do this then? And she said, well, for the same reasons you do. But I think that was the moment at which I realized that there is a space for recovering journalists or storytellers or broadcast media professionals in that space. So I think that's probably the weirdest example. I'm just trying to scroll through my friends' backgrounds, but I think that's probably the outline.
Johnny, have you got any examples to throw in the pot?
I think the best example really is the fact that we look into a bit more unique way of looking at talent from the space is something that probably you won't link marketing with, like storytelling. Although that is kind of like given, but at the same time for some brands to move towards that, and I see more of the brands are doing that. Like Unilever has set up studio recently about last year, and more of that space is filled up now with people in marketing, but at the same time from broadcast media as well. So I think the greatest outline is that able to see how that landscape changed and fit right talent into those space effectively to do the job. And that to me is very innovative. So for brands that actually step up to look at how they can bring broadcast media or people in storytelling into the space of the brand is already a step forward. Because not a lot of brands actually dare to attempt that, quite frankly, because I think it is, to me, it was such a kind of like enlightenment in the sense that when I was approached by Marriott to do that, so and they've been waiting for me for quite a number of months before I took on the job, because they couldn't find someone that actually can fit that perception of how a studio works in terms of the setup. And I think that big steps for them to actually take on that. And I use the same way that I'm now hiring as well, because I think I want to push the boundary a little bit to see how I can actually develop my own way of the marketing skills. So that, to me, I think kind of like really a great opportunity to do so.
Our allies are the marketing tech people, so we've been talking a lot about content, but at current date, about half our team are actually working with Eloqua or Marketo or Adobe Analytics or Sitecore. They're working with these very robust customer engagement platforms, and they're sort of the outliers in our group, because they'll say, look, I'm integrating Marketo with Microsoft Dynamics on the CRM side, and I need some content that will help us, bridge people over from this part of their journey or this digital interaction to a different one, right? And so they're looking at it almost like, I don't know, the way you put like, worm on a hook for a fish or something like that, and all they need in that process is they need something, or we're creating a customer experience. And they say, okay, we've created this whole onboarding customer experience on this platform. Now we need the words and pictures, right? Because it's all the actual sort of nuts and bolts of moving people through the process is there, but without the content, it doesn't come to life. And so, we you can see like half the office puts on their headphones when there's a long, boring discussion about email open rates and that kind of thing, and then the other half of the office takes their headphones off and talks about thought leadership and whatever, and the techs put their headphones on. You can almost see in the office trying to bring those two pieces together.
I'll just throw in a couple of examples here. So in Tokyo, I have a former equity salesperson from Citibank doing content. She was a closet freelance journalist whose real passion was journalism. I also have one of Kevin's graduates now down in Singapore who she did her master's in journalism at Hong Kong U, but she had also been for years in market research and also in banking on the asset management side. And amongst her degrees is one in agricultural economics. She's incredibly useful, I might add. But I would say for us, quite often the best combination is somebody who came out of journalism, went on the corporate comms or PR side, and then was desperate to get back onto the content side, because not only do they have those editorial skills and curiosity skills, but they also have client-facing skills because they've been on the client side and they understand what the client is trying to do, and they're much better able to communicate. On that note, I'd like to throw it open to questions from the audience. You can put your hand up. We have one over here.
Bring your microphone.
Please tell us.
Me?
Yes, tell us who you are and who you like.
I'm Colin Ruffle. I'm one of the outsourced content providers. I'm just curious about one thing that perhaps I'm being a bit naive, but I'd be interested to know what the panel feel about what content is worth, because you mentioned a lot of companies now are lean and mean, and certainly from a provider's point of view, I'm quite familiar with the second one of those two. And I wondered how you I mean, I've heard you've got a long laundry list of skills that you want. You want storytelling, journalism, TV, radio, PR, marketing, degrees, PhDs, curiosity. Whoa! And you want all this for $2 a word. I just wonder how you, or how the panel establish your clients want return on investment, but so also do your writers. So if you want somebody to invest a week in producing a brilliant little piece for you with a nice new twist to it, how do you establish what you're going to pay them? What is it worth? I'm just curious to how you establish the rates that you're willing to pay.
That's a very good question. I'll jump in and say that we have a range. I mean, a lot of it depends on the complexity of the project. I mean, if we're talking about a 10,000-word white paper on a very complicated topic that requires some data analysis and some interviews, then that's going to command a much higher price. And especially if it's, for those kinds of projects, we try to work with former staff, some of whom are sitting in the audience here, just because they require very little by way of explanation. They know what it's all about and what's involved, and they would command a higher fee. But I think generally we try and we would pay more than what mainstream journalism would pay, definitely, because we demand more from that. But again, it depends on the complexity, and it depends on also, I would say, on the skill of the contributor. If it's somebody that we work with regularly, I mean, it's somebody who we know is going to require very little on the part of our in-house staff, they can command a premium. I defer to others.
Well, when you pay peanuts, you get lunch. So really, at the end of the day, I mean, we operate on two levels, right? I mean, production is not cheap, to be honest. I mean, making a film, I mean, you want good quality stuff to build a brand, you better pay for it. So I think that is the understanding. I mean, you know, even with smartphone can do more on video mode. I mean, it's still about telling that story and able to do quality to engage. So for us at the end of the day, it's still down to who you're targeting at, what's the really objective, and then do the best and backtrack to make the best of the content that you want to get off. And then on the editorial part, we do pay people to write good travel articles, understanding pain points of traveler and make their journey easier. And those that we work with writers, we pay them good, depending on really whether it comes on with a clear brief, and then there's also the image cost and all that. So it ranges. It can be as low as $1,000 for a piece of like a couple of hundred words to $15,000 for something. So again, to me, at the end of the day, the fundamental remains. I mean, we can say that with technology you can be a creator, anyone can be a creator, but I kind of like disagree with that. I don't think anybody can just be a creator. It does take skill sets, it does take understanding, and if we just kind of like put it so simple that anyone can be a filmmaker, well, yeah, I know with technology you can. I do think that there's a lot more respect for that trade. So, same point, you pay peanuts, you get monkey.
And sort of scarily blunt into that, I think. So one phenomenon is the little fish that gets eaten by the bigger fish by the bigger fish. So that if our client is treating us right and values the initiative and finds it important and are willing to pay for it, then we are able to pay our contributors more. Whereas if the client at the end of the chain it just says, give me some wallpaper that I can use to put on my website, then it's valued less and it's paid for less. And also I think what we find in the commercial world is actually doing something quite simple can be very difficult. So a 300-word blog post might need to be reviewed, by the legal department and the CEO and the communications person and the business unit head and things like that. And so it's not really the cost per word, right? It's the cost per hassle to get that through the. So you're working with a startup and somebody's great idea, do that. I want it out now. That's $300. But getting something through the board of directors, so it's not really sort of a cost per word. And we like to work with people who can go with that process with us, right? Because often a project will morph and change several times as different stakeholders in the organization look at it. And you can't become impatient with them and say, why can't you just look at that copy and approve it? Because it's actually a whole, you're not paying for the content, you're also paying for the whole process. And when we work with beloved partners, let's not call them outsourced vendors, we're looking for people who can go on that journey with us rather than get impatient or quote something really low and then get frustrated that it has to have 20 different sets of relations.
I've actually just raised an interesting point I'd like to address to Patricia. In terms of salaries, not on the sales side necessarily, but on the content side, what are you seeing, up, down?
I'm seeing clients obviously become more specific in terms of hiring needs. There's much more of an education process involved in explaining to the client that these skills are hard to find. And because of that, there is more flexibility on budget. So we do have the option of saying, so what I would typically do is we present a range of candidates, various levels, and the clients will then be responsive to that and responsive to the range and budget as well.
And so they're not just going for the lowest possible.
They aren't, no. And I agree with what David said, I agree with what Tony said. It really is about quality. Yeah.
Kevin, do you see a lot of companies coming to you looking for cheap and or free labor in the form of interns?
I would say yes. I'm not a distinguished guest here. No, I do see that a lot. And you can sense where they're coming from. That they are just trying to get free labor at one time, sort of. So I'll just get free labor here, and then afterwards I don't need them anymore. But then I do sense it from organizations that have an idea that universities are a way of bringing in talent that they can nurture. And in the long run, it may be a more affordable cost, and that's where they're looking at it from. So we do sense it, but and that's why we end up being quite selective with who we want to work with, because we know it's in the benefit for alumni and students in the long run. But it varies. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a big brand name or a smaller brand name. it just depends on who the manager is. And that's what I've noticed. It's not really about the companies, who the managers, how they want to run the team.
Thanks. Arun, I believe you had a question.
Sure. Do it. Do you want me to say who I work for?
Yes, and what your relationship is to the woman on my right.
I'll say that point. I'm Arun, I work for The Economist. I just had a point about the millennial issue as somebody that just kind of sneaks into the millennial range and works for a company that literally has red tape in its logo. Yeah, true. I'm not sure I agree with you, Tony, that it's hard to motivate millennials. I think a lot of millennials are motivated. I think we've got a couple in here that would also disagree with that point. Where I struggle is with the younger hires that I make these days in really teaching the concept of ownership. And I think, you know, sort of giving them ownership, but also asking them to take ownership of projects. You know, so sort of if we give them a task to do, it's more like, well, my manager said I have to do this, as opposed to I want to take this, I want to run with it, I want to be creative with it, and I want to make it my own. That wasn't really a challenge, I think, for a few people in previous generations, let me say. But I'm trying to be political. How did you guys respond to that point? I mean, are you seeing a similar kind of, you know, approach to work these days, that it's hard for the younger generation to take ownership of their projects?
Well, actually, I don't mean to say that they're not, it's hard to motivate them. I think it is the point of, it's more to actually get them the mindset. They are very eager, that's the point. I mean, that's why for us the challenge is not so much about motivation. I think they're definitely motivated. But to keep them going and actually, like you say, ownership is probably even harder because they keep looking for new challenges. And certain time in some organization, that may not be given. So there's a certain level of patience for that one. I think in terms of motivation, I deal with the millennial in my team all the time, but I think they want something faster. And my worry is how do I keep motivating them to that point of that rather than they are not being motivated. They are. In fact, they are much more motivated than I was when I was in my millennium, so to speak, right? So I think that is my fear of it, like giving them the challenges. But then at the same time balance it with all the structural and organizational restriction that needs them to think in that mindset. Right? I mean, so sometimes I almost feel that I should be a startup because I think that's how fast we can move. And Millennium would be perfect for that because they can definitely deliver more for me than in an organization with much more, you know, sort of like layers and red tapes. Yeah.
I think, Tricia, you'd like to add to that on the millennial question?
Right. Okay, so just from a recruitment standpoint, I think we come in very handy as sort of intermediaries in that respect in really sort of understanding the client, the business objectives, management styles, and then trying to translate that you know, to the younger generation. You're absolutely right. They're extremely eager. You know, they're ambitious. They think everything can be done quicker than quicker than the way we work. Because I think social media is very quick in the sense you can see the results almost instantaneously. So what we try and do is we encourage our clients to, where you typically have an annual performance review and then offer some sort of incentive, we encourage our clients to have a review at 6 months and then kind of look at offering some of that incentive at the 6-month period. It's not necessarily a salary review, but it could mean a revision in title, or it could mean additional responsibility, or it could mean the opportunity to work closely with another team where that, you know, where the graduate can then get a little bit more exposure. So they see that as a semi-promotion. And so we, you know, we'll work with HR and say, okay, so how do you review, how do you mentor and motivate, how do you motivate and upskill? Can you, instead of doing it on an annual basis, then look at, you know, a quarterly incentive or a biannual incentive?
We have time for 1 or 2 more questions. No? All right. I think we'll wrap it up then. Ron, would you like to come back up?
Happy review record. Just quickly to say thank you all for coming, and SOPA is holding its Christmas party on December 7th. So
Wednesday.
Thank God that you're here. On December 6th, so hope to see some of you there. Thank you.